Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Safe House. I'm Jeff Edwards, co founder of Safe House Initiative, and your host for today's podcast. Enjoy. There's a massive need for talent in this space, cybersecurity space, and the training certification. There's so many different thoughts on how to go about it. And today we're extremely fortunate to have Keith Gologorsky with Hack the Box. Has some very interesting insights and a really interesting story, personal story, he's going to share with us today. Keith, hey, welcome to the Safe House.
Thanks, Jeff. Glad to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Now we're thrilled to have you, buddy. So since this is your first time on the Safe House, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience and let them get a better understanding of your background.
Yeah, sure. So Keith Gologorsky, I now run the public sector here at Hack the Box, and been working within the government space since I graduated college back in 2003 with a computer science degree. When I came out of college, got a job working in the DC area, and was using that computer science degree doing scripting and things like that. From there, I moved over to the DoD CERT, which soon became what's known as JTF-GNO, Joint Task Force Global Network Operations. While I was there, I was kind of moving into an incident handler role, but my background through college was computer science with programming and scripting. So I never really had knowledge on network based attacks or on what adversaries were doing. So it was really an eye-opening experience. And being in there, I started to really like the chase that would take place. And it's what the adversary was doing within the network. So I started to get that workman's high of finding what the adversary was doing and going through all those reports and things like that. While working there, I wanted to kind of advance my career. So they, taking some career advice from people who were prior military and friends, they said, one of the things was dress for the job you want, not the job you have. So
okay,
started wearing ties into work to trying to show that aspect. And I started to try and learn more about my job, where the next steps could be in that, because this is 2004, so go back 20 years, and you didn't really have cyber, quote unquote cyber. It was network defense. So things started to understand where we can go and what we can do in this field. And I started to also want to learn about the contract management side because I wanted to move up in that career. So I was balancing between technical analysis and business, intelligence. And while working through this in 2004 and 2005 and 6, I was passed over for promotions, like team leads, raises, and I got really down on myself. So I had gotten a certification here and there. I had went and got my master's because I couldn't understand why I was passed over where my knowledge I felt in the job was better than the people who were getting that promotion. And in talking to one of the guys there, the watch officer over there, he said, well, you don't have a military background. You were never in the military. And JTF-GNO was a very mostly strategic command. So I didn't have operational or tactical background. So rather than just sitting back and not doing anything, I kind of realized, all right, I have to take an action here and figure out what's going on. So I decided to then get a job because it's 2006, and I went to go get tactical and operational knowledge, which meant going out to the desert. And I went out to Iraq for a year and really started to understand what an operational mindset was and a tactical mindset, and how important it was to balance security versus availability. Because it's real easy, in my view, to just simply say, let's put all these controls in place. But as an operator, you now are not operating at full capacity because of security. So it really became eye-opening, and I did that for a year. I came back to the DC area, actually back to JTF-GNO, and I was then kind of moving into the threat analysis field. So this is 2007, and started to kind of realize the intelligence field was blending into the operational field and doing analysis. So you started to have threat analysis where you were both intel trained and technical training.
Hmm.
So that those silos started to like kind of fall apart in that time period.
Hmm.
And I didn't think that would be a great career for me to stay in like the DC area and work at that field. So a friend of mine working in the location told me about Africa Command, US Africa Command getting stood up in Stuttgart, Germany. And Symantec, the old antivirus company that was bought by Broadcom,
Mm-hmm.
said they were actually developing a cyber threat analysis program, and I could take that role.
Hmm.
Now, I actually had never heard of Stuttgart, Germany. I obviously knew of Munich, Cologne, Berlin, but never Stuttgart. So I decided to take a leap of faith then in October of 07, and I headed out to Germany to kind of help stand up US Africa Command.
Hmm.
I worked in the J3 there, and my boss there at the time, it was a Air Force 04, started telling me and teaching about money and manpower and how you can do operational support. And it was really an eye-opening experience at a different level than what I did before. So I was able to take some of like the training I got being in the desert and understanding operational and tactical support, the work at JTF and those contacts and what's going on, and then the kind of untapped area being in Europe and being more of a front line, even though Africa Command is a strategic command, we were given that operational support because it was those networks weren't protected in the same way. And that mission set started to involve partner nations.
Hmm.
And lo and behold, around that time, the domain started really shifting a lot. You had the Russia-Georgia cyber war, the Russia-Estonia cyber war, and you could see that there needed to be an analytical support more outside of the DC area and at these geographical combatant commands that have an operational need as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this really started like getting me going into the threat analysis and supporting operations and planning efforts. And you have a limited amount of analysts to work with that are forward out here, right, in the
Mm-hmm.
arena. And it broadened my horizons and knowledge to say, like, all right, this mission set is very much unrealized in terms of how much the cyber domain touches. Because this is 2007, 2008, and 2009.
Yeah.
If we look at it through the lens today, everyone takes it, yes, cyber touches everything. We all need to be aware.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case back then. So when
Yeah.
we look and try to understand where we can go and what we can do, this on-the-job training takes you really that next level.
Yeah.
And then I kind of grow from there and moved over to EUCOM headquarters, where we established a partnership capacity building thing, working with NATO and NATO nations to get better analytical relationships because they have a lot of talent in those nations, and we start working together, and also building up the rapport to share information back and forth. So you start really growing and understanding the needs of those locations,
Yeah.
how we can work together. Because if you look at something that's going on now in the news, where it's like in Ukraine, and if U.S. forces are going to support NATO or support an entity like that,
Yeah.
you're going to use that host nation infrastructure. So you
Mm-hmm.
kind of have to go through a series of questions to make sure U.S. forces are secure and NATO forces are secure and doing communications and running those operations. So that was kind of what my career took. It took a very unique path that was unplanned. When I came to Europe in 2007, I only planned to come for 2 years, and I've been out here for 18 years and still plan to stay for longer. And I went from something that was a computer science degree with a programming background to an analytical one focused on networks and operating within the cyber domain. And now culminated with I founded a company with friends of mine that was purchased by private equity and then by another company just recently. And now working and running the public sector at Hack the Box, which is known as a training company, but is really an operational support element.
Mm.
And what I learned with working within the government as an analyst over 20 years, I extrapolate that into what I do today. So I touch on the strategy and building and shaping that mindset to a operational support and shaping how the content team pushes out content, and down to supporting my team individually to see how they can better equip the base. So it's a pretty, I find a pretty unique experience of what I've gone through.
Yeah, it really is because you took the fundamentals and you then operationalized them, and then you evolved into more strategic because you had the operational and the foundational aspects of certifications, things of that nature, and you've rolled it all into one. And it sounds like today you are taking and consolidating that 25-year or 20-some-year career and put it on, fast forward basically by distilling it down, saying, here's how we could probably train up a workforce faster, and that's kind of how you operate. Is that a fair assessment?
It is, and it takes from like how the on-the-job training is a supplemental piece to the certifications or certificates, where it's like a residential style training. Because what happens is it was go get a certification, go to a boot camp and get the certification. Now you
Yeah,
know your
yeah,
job.
yeah, yeah,
And you realize when you start working in the space, you're like, the content that I did to get the certification was very good at that time, but you didn't update that. That's not really applicable to what you're doing today. So when I take it to this level, I talk to people about like, you need content that's regularly updated based on what the adversary is doing. And
right.
then you need to have the constant training in bite-sized pieces,
Yeah.
not a 5-day boot camp. And we go from what we consider like a certificate, where you do a series of trainings, then you pass your test, like you sit for your test, and then you do continuous training,
Mm-hmm.
which helps you now follow along with what your job is and improving your career, because it's a
Yeah.
critical aspect to grow and expand upon your career rather than solely your job.
Yeah, so the everybody's really certification hungry, I guess, is
Mhm.
what you kind of. I think one of the problems potentially is what I'm hearing is that get the certifications, but that could be out of date very quickly, and it's not living and breathing as you try to learn and become viable as a support person in this environment. You fall out of favor, even though you have all the certs in the world. They could be out of date because things change so fast. Is that an accurate statement?
In my belief, I think so. It's
Yeah.
the certification is is a great way for your HR or your top level manager
Hmm.
to simply say you're qualified or not.
Right.
But and it's a way to eliminate you rather than it's like proving the negative instead of proving the positive.
Yeah.
And that's where I struggle, because when I have hired people and developed teams and done that, I look across and I go, okay, you have these 10 certifications. That's great. What's your practical knowledge? How does it apply here? Can you
Yeah.
do these things? Because in that moment in time, you achieved that rote memorization to pass the certification.
Yeah.
But now, if we go across and do this for a longer haul, how are you able to really extrapolate the fundamental teachings you've done to be the next edge in things? And I had a
Hmm.
conversation with one of the guys I know who's been in the field for 20 plus years, coming out of the intelligence community. Um, and I was saying it's a unique way that we kind of operate, because you have to be thinking about what the adversary is doing
Hmm.
tomorrow, not today. So it's like we did the analogy of a satellite. When they start developing a satellite, it's for like they're future proofing it for years out. And that's what you're doing from a defensive mindset or operating within the cyber domain. You're trying to predict what the adversary is doing. So you're
Right.
developing an intelligence driven operation, not just being reactive. You're being predictive so you
Yeah.
can stop the adversary further to the left instead of inside your network.
Yeah. And that's probably where you're starting to leverage AI to some degree, I would
Mhm.
guess.
Yes, exactly. And it's people and processes. So when
Hmm.
the AI thing become the AI aspect, sorry, let's go with the AI aspect. That is a unique feature kind of coming into the security domain, because it can't replace all the people, but it should be able to take away a lot of the repetitive, monotonous tasks you're doing. But the adversary can manipulate AI, and we've seen it kind of in reporting a couple times and what they've done. So when you look at it from that manner, you as an operator on the defensive side of the network, it's okay, is the AI tool operating in the same way it should be operating? Is it improving things? Is it delaying things? Is it there's still some questions and things that pop up related to it. So even though C-suite personnel are, we have to go to AI, we have to have AI-driven tools, we can eliminate 3/4 of our staff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a little bit short-minded, in my opinion, to kind of operate in that manner.
Interesting. So, from a foundation, you have certifications. That's your base knowledge that needs to be fresh and up to date on a regular basis. So that's one thing. How do you get the operational aspects? How do you do that? Through gamification, or how do you do the applying that knowledge and then to grow that knowledge into a more strategic kind of a focus?
In my view, the gamification gets to be the way training should be instituted, because you want to keep people enticed and engaged to continuously learn.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be a task, a forced event. So the apps and things that are being successful have a game to it, and it's short-lived. You're getting scores, you're playing against people, you're competitive. And that's how, like, from our platform's perspective, we gamify how your training experience is. And if you look at things like Duolingo as an example, your lesson is 30 seconds long, and you complete the lesson and you move on to the next thing. In Hack the Box, we do similar kind of fashion, where your lesson is broken down into smaller chunks. You can put it on LinkedIn of like, hey, I've successfully completed these things. You get a score, you get to move up in rankings. All those things kind of spur the competitive spirit you have to want to continuously learn different things. And when I talked about back in like 2003 and 2004, when I broke into cyber network defense, then I was in the instant handling role, and I was starting to learn a little bit more. And then it starts becoming threat analysis, and intelligence professionals work with technical professions. You work together. So you're now effectively, I was sitting next to Intel analysts, learning how they do analysis, and they're now learning how I do technical analysis. So you're broadening your career to elevate your next steps in life, in my view. So you're now going from, I'm in my one singular silo. I know how I'm doing, but I can't communicate with others. But when I learn the next person's job who sits next to me, who's an Intel analyst, we now can talk better. They can give me better actionable intelligence. I can give them better feedback to search for the adversary doing other things. Now the scope of what the adversary's operation broadens, and eventually you can bring in the geopolitical view into that. So that's the residential training continues, and now you grow your career and your knowledge, and you can talk more intelligently about what you've done in the past.
So, Keith, are you advocating that once you understand the fundamentals, how to operationalize, and you start to look at more strategic thinking in terms of the more analysis of what is going to happen, or predicting what's going to happen, whatever tools you may use to help cross-train across disciplines or training? Is there a kind of a cross-pollination that you're advocating?
100%. And
okay,
I think it's a great thing to cross-train on the different aspects. So my one area is, like, as a defensive person, right? A defensive operator. My belief is you should be understanding what the adversary's capabilities are and how they operate, because now I can create mitigation strategies. And I can do now I take it to the next level up. I can do, when you're doing operational planning and strategic support, you can say, I understand this adversary would target me. Here's how they would target me. And now I build into my strategic planning efforts this way. So I want to now operate in this manner. And then from our side in the company, we're building out methodologies and trainings that align to that. So now you can really learn and understand, oh, here's how the adversary is operating. How do I create a mitigation strategy against that? If they entered our network through A, well, would I detect that? No. Okay, now I need to put a mitigation strategy. If they then went from A to B, do I have logging in place or some type of ability to detect that activity? Can I mitigate them there? It's all because I've learned what the adversary is doing. So that cross training becomes huge.
Keith, I keep hearing about this huge gap, technical gap that's between, skills gap between a 500,000 and maybe more in the U.S. alone. How do we fill that gap? And how would you, and what does that gap look like? Is it, the fundamental aspects is 300,000 people or 300,000 jobs versus, the more technically, the strategic thinkers of 50,000? What is the makeup of that big gap that we keep hearing about?
It's a really interesting and hard question, to be honest.
Well, it took me 5 minutes to get it out, so I'm glad you said that. So it made me
Yeah,
feel better. Yeah.
yeah. I'm as an analyst at heart, like I'm a devil's in the details because a lot of people like to throw those numbers out, right? And you probably searched and found some different news articles that said all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I kind of always said, well, let's drill down to certain organizations and see where it is, because is it cyber analytical jobs? Is it IT support, network engineering, things like that? Or is it
Right.
security conscious? Yeah.
Interesting. What other thoughts do you have about this whole realm of how to, especially for small, mid-sized businesses, to help them to train up, be ready, but not panic when the real deal comes? Because I've heard of, all the training in the world doesn't replace being under attack and then people fall apart. Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. It's how you operate under fire is what's the testament of like your character.
Yeah.
Because it's always really simple. When times are great, you're easy going, everything is perfect. But when you're the proverbial piece of hits the fan, as we say, right?
Yeah.
Without saying that four-letter word.
That's right.
That's really how you're going to operate and do things. How I look at it is like you train as you fight, and practice gets you to that level. And it's doing as many team style exercises combined with singular level training will get you ready, because the more you practice in a more difficult environment will raise your capability and ability to react in an easy way. And I, the reason why I look at it in that manner is because like rote memorization, monotonous type of repetitive learning, as you say, can get you to that point. So when an event occurs and it's affecting the entire network, and you ran through those scenarios I talked about before of like understanding the adversary, you can now find those logs and you can do the analysis and you can produce the results and become more resilient when an event occurs.
We could, there's so many things I'd love to have you come back some point, but if for today, if there's one thing that our audience could do to help improve their security, their readiness, what would that one thing be they could do today?
Training is obviously the easiest answer, right? Because it's the more you train, the more you do things. I would actually go down to another level of saying cross training, learning more about the person next to you. Because when you look at that small, medium, or even large business, your manager should have hired the amount of people that equates to getting the job done in a normal day-to-day function. But what happens when two of those people are not in the office that day?
Yeah.
And if you don't know what they're doing and an event occurs on your network, you can't go to your boss and say, well, such and such people are not here today. We can't do anything else. They're going to say, look for the solution. So that cross-training ability, by being these single points of failure, there's a big issue that kind of comes up when an event occurs.
Keith, that's great. That's great advice. And I love sharing kind of your 20-some year career and helping people learn from that in a much shorter time frame. And it's going to really help a lot of people. Really appreciate you coming on the Safe House, and we'd love to have you come back in the future. That's our episode. We greatly appreciate you joining us and hope it was a wonderful learning experience. I'm your host, Jeff Edwards, and remember, be safe, be resilient, and be kind to each other. For more educational materials, please visit us at safehouseinitiative.org. All materials are free from tracking, promotions, memberships, or fees of any kind. Safe House Initiative is an all-volunteer organization.